I grew up watching, Raiders, Temple of Doom, Last Crusade, Jurassic Park, Back to the Future, Goonies. Like these were the films, you really felt for these characters in these big worlds.
Welcome to Story and Craft. Now, here's your host, Mark Preston.
All right, here we go. Another episode of Story and Craft. Thank you so much for stopping back by. If this is your first episode, welcome. Glad to have you. My name is Mark Preston. It's a pleasure to have you along for this episode. Great conversation. We are talking filmmaking with executive producer Ashley Jay Sandberg. She produced the new Blockbuster Twisters, which is coming out Friday, July 19th. It was a great conversation talking about her career and her inspirations, and it was a really informative chat. I think you'll enjoy it quite a bit. Real quick request, if you would, don't forget to follow Story and Craft. Grab your phone, hit the follow button. You get notified every time there's a new episode, and we have some great ones coming up. And also, if you would, please drop a review in there. A few stars. It helps people find the show, which is very cool, and I appreciate you doing it. Also, storyandcraftpod.com, the website, everything you could possibly want to know about the show, including all the socials. You can drop me a note as well. Just say hi. I like hearing from you. Don't be bashful. Go ahead. Send me a message. I like hearing from you. Also, you can find out more about our guests, find out who we've had on, find out a little bit more about them. It's all right there at storyandcraftpod.com. All right, let's get after it. Today we're talking filmmaking, a big summer blockbuster. How does it come to be? Well, let's find out. Today is Ashley Jay Sandberg Day, right here on Story and Craft. So where are you joining us from today?
I'm in Los Angeles. I just got back. We were up north at Skywalker Ranch finishing the final mix on the film Twisters, and we just got back a day or so ago. So
Skywalker Ranch, that's north of San Francisco, right? Am I thinking right?
About an hour north in Nicasio. And it's really, right off the Lucas Valley Road. And it's really something pretty spectacular. I think for all filmmakers and talent and finishing a film, you're in the most stressful time of your project, but yet you're in this like very safe, nestled, quiet community. So you're able to finish the film in this very, serene area. It was really pretty special.
Don't they have like a really well-known big sound stage and everything up there? And
yes.
Yeah,
they have a bunch of offices and stage, some of the best in the business that are working in sound. They also have the best theater that I've ever been in to watch a film and hear a film, and that's on the property right there too. So it's to be able to see and hear your film in that capacity, and know what the audience is going to start feeling. We've been living with it in such a current state, to see these final touches and it come alive, and be surrounded by people who are equally as excited for the film it's really great.
Now, where are you originally from?
Originally, I'm from Baltimore. And I knew I wanted to be in the industry. I knew I wanted to work in production. At one point, I thought it was news broadcasts that I wanted to do and produce the news. And so when looking for universities and schools, I was seeing who had that program, and also how do I get myself to California? And so I ended up going to Pepperdine, sight unseen, which was not too bad because it was Malibu. I said, how bad could it be? Willing to take the chance. And that's what got me out to California. And I've stayed ever since. So now I've been here over 20 something years now.
Now, did you do anything in TV, or was that just an aspiration initially, but did you ever spend any time doing it, or it was just what got you to college?
I did. So for me, when I went to school, I ended up going the news broadcast route and producing the local news in Malibu and reporting and covering that. And then I took a film studies course my junior year, and I ended up minoring in film studies, realizing I loved the craft, loved all the pieces about it. And then after I graduated, I worked, in physical production, doing PA work, whatever I really could get my hands on to be on sets. And a lot of those were TV shows like Ugly Betty. And then when I went into working at Kennedy Marshall, I eventually, at one point in my time there, I was there for over 12 years, but I was working in our TV department and overseeing our development of TV, and then ended up overseeing all of our TV and film while I was there.
What drew you to the TV thing, to the TV news thing?
I remember my morning starting before school, putting the Today Show on and just, getting a taste of what was going on in the world and making the world seem so much bigger than this, like, town that I lived in outside of Baltimore. And it just fascinated me that everything that was going on and how you could, if you're a reporter, you could travel and you cover these different stories. And for me, I think it always came down to the story element of it. Like, okay, what can we get that's breaking or new or fresh for people? What are people not knowing? So I think that's the aspect that really drew me to why I wanted to be in news. And ultimately, I feel like that ended up tying what my love to filmmaking is. And it is the story, it is the human interest stories. It's getting to know these characters and people that maybe, that don't live like us or live different than us. And then we get to know who these people are and experience.
I always thought it'd be a blast to do that. You're kind of plugged into everything going on. And the only time I had press passes, I thoroughly abused them. I went to Texas Rangers games and stuff like that, got in the press box. And
yes, those are the perks of the job. So, when you're able to do that is a good thing. That's a fun thing to do.
Now, did your folks, were they into the media or were they into any kind of performance?
No, this was, my mom was a social worker for 30 years until she retired and went into real estate. And my father was in sales. So no industry family whatsoever. I just kind of was someone as a young age, just putting on movies and watching them over and over and over again, and really falling in love with like how you can make these worlds feel so big. And so I really was the only one in my family to then pursue a job in the arts like this.
Did you have any brothers or sisters who were around, or were you an only kid?
No, I have two sisters. I'm the middle. So I think oftentimes my husband will often mention that he could see the middle child in me. And I think part of it is wanting to make sure I please and get everyone right. Everyone's good and happy and, everyone's needs are met.
Is that a trait of the middle child? Because I was an only child. I'm living vicariously through my three kids, but is that a trait of the middle child? Is the pleaser?
I think so. I mean, at least in our family, it was. I felt that, I was close to both of my sisters, but I usually was the middle between the older and the younger and making sure I'm like, always kind of sometimes giving up my spot so everyone else was happy and could go. And we keep, kind of the peacekeeper with everybody.
Sometimes I'm kind of checking out on the sociology of my three kids. How's the dynamic? I remember always telling them, you're going to be brothers and sisters forever. You got to get along,
I will say, I think everyone gets closer as they get older. I think you start realizing how important family is and why we need our family. So I found my sisters and I got even closer as we all got older.
They live back in Baltimore?
I have one sister lives in Los Angeles, a mile from me, which is wonderful and really helps support our family because I'm gone on the road a lot for work and I have a daughter. And so they help us out a lot. And then I have one sister back on the East Coast with my parents.
You said you had a little girl. How old is she?
She's 8.
Okay, so she's not like a little, but she's, the third grade and summer vacation's kicking in, I'm assuming right now. So
now that she's older, it's a little harder to have her bring her on location with me now that school's up and going. So our family has not a rule, but we try to go no longer than 2 weeks without being with each other.
Well, this last year must have been a big year for the family with her being in school. And this isn't a small project finding a stretch her on.
Yeah, I think I have a good partner, so that helps a whole lot. But we really explain kind of what I do to her, so like what my work is, and explain that for her, so she has a better understanding as to why I'm gone. And she's very interested. And so when we can, we'll bring her onto set. And it also helped that our director, Isaac, he also had a 10-year-old daughter. And so they were able to experience some of this film together.
Oh, that's very cool. As we go back to post TV aspirations to now you're doing the production thing, what was it that kind of shifted you into saying, I want to produce? That
was always my goal for whenever all the work that I did leading up to where I am now, whether it was being an assistant, whether it was being a coordinator, it was always of the mindset of wanting to be a creative producer. And I was always very transparent with the company I was working for, Kennedy Marshall and Frank Marshall, who I had worked with for a very long time. And when this project came along, at the time I was head of our production development, and I saw this project come in from Mark L. Smith and Joe, and they were telling us, Joe Kaczynski, they were telling us this idea that they really want to relook at Twisters. And we were sitting down talking about it, and I I was like, I had a feeling, I'm like, this is the one I think that we can get across the finish line and made. And so early on, Frank trusted me, and he said, this is your project, spread your wings, go get it done. And really that's what we did. So it was, about a year and some change with developing the script and getting the script right. And then being able to find a director to attach to it once Joe was no longer able to direct it due to conflicting projects. And then seeing it, getting us a green light and made. And for me, it was always what I love about producing is that you get to help put all the pieces together. So you find the writers and team that you want to build out the story. Then you find your filmmaker who can help see it. You find your crew, you find your production designer, all these people to make this vision happen. And really my job a lot of the times is problem solving, and how do I get the director's vision on the big screen? How do we get yeses when we're getting nos? How do we work within the budget that we have to really get to make it feel big? And I always feel there's a way.
Is Twisters considered a sequel, for lack of a better way of putting it, to Twister, or is it his own standalone project?
It's its own standalone. So this is a next chapter in the story. I think similar themes with nature and, what nature looks like now, in the world that we live in. But it is definitely all new characters, new adventures, new science that's in there. But for the original fans, you'll definitely get some good Easter eggs and see that sprinkled throughout, which is really fun for people in some of our previews to call out the things that they recognize that are throwbacks or nods to the original film.
Sharing a DNA. It's not necessarily a sequel, but it's definitely carved from the same cloth, as it were.
Yes.
So when you got a hold of this, there wasn't even a script. So this was just an idea.
It was an idea that came in and really, getting Steven Spielberg excited about it too, which he definitely was, and so supportive. He has a really big fascination with tornadoes. And if there is a YouTube video of a tornado out there, he's definitely seen it. And so he was right off the bat very supportive of us moving forward with this project. And the big thing for us was getting the science right. Can we make this grounded, believable? We don't want to offer false hope to our audiences. And so we really spent a lot of time getting this science to a place that, can be, looked into and questioned. It's definitely science theory that we're using in this. And we brought on an amazing consultant, Kevin Kelleher, who also worked on the original film. So I, worked with him. And
oh, okay. Well, as a kid who grew up in Dallas, I remember in elementary school, the tornado drills, in the hall, put a book over your head. I mean, you're kind of getting like a crouched in position, but it's a fascinating thing because as much as we know about it, there's still so much they don't know, and hence, I guess, the whole the tornado chasers going out there and doing their thing. And just between the time they made the original movie and now, there's so much that's been learned. But what was there anything that you were educated on? You just didn't know about the whole tornadic activity thing. Was there something you learned like, oh wow, this is kind of interesting?
Well, we were able to get a tour of NOAA and and their whole facility and infrastructure they do and how they cover the entire United States in this space. And I think what I've learned now working on this film is that, Tornado Alley is just getting bigger. It's not, what it once was. And also the fact that our tornado seasons are more months. There's not a traditional tornado season. And so learning about kind of where the changes have where that is how that's happening, and how when we were in prepping the film, there was a tornado in Los Angeles. It's just becoming more and more common, I think, or we're more aware of it than we had been in the past. What I did find out too is that in the original Twister, there wasn't a lot of funding for the research at NOAA and at these facilities. And so when they were making the movie, Kevin Kelleher told me he talked to Kathy Kennedy, who was the producer of the first film, and said, please, whatever you do, do not make it look like we have a fancy facility here, because that's not the truth. And after the film came out, there was a lot more money that was granted to do this kind of studies and research and up our technology and kind of, tracking these storms. And that after the first film came out, OU became the #1 school for meteorology. And that wasn't originally that. And it stayed #1 since. So there was a bunch of I'm out to dinner and I'm rattling off facts. There's a lot of things that have stayed in that I didn't expect that I would know, but know so much coming out of this film.
I remember when the first one came out, I was the biggest Bill Paxton fan. I had the opportunity to meet him at a press junket for True Lies. He's from Fort Worth, or was from Fort Worth. And for, like I said, me being from that in Tornado Alley, being familiar with it, I was like, oh, this is kind of a whole thing I didn't know existed, that there are these people out there. Something I'm personally curious about as an executive producer, when you're coming on board, of course, the director has a lot of say-so naturally when it comes to casting, but as the script came together, you're like, this is who I think should play this part or this part.
Yeah, it definitely evolved as the script kept going and as we got into different stages. When the great thing is that Isaac and I have a lot of similarities and as what in taste and creatively. So when he was talking names with me, there were also the names that I was already thinking about. And I think since I seen Daisy Edgar-Jones and Normal People, she's been on my list of actors to continue to watch. And I feel that she brought so much to the character of Kate Carter. And I'm so glad we were able to get her, because I think this is going to be a really big jumping off point for her in her career. Anthony Ramos is another character or actor that I wanted to work with. And it was interesting because the character originally was named Mason in the script. And we were saying, well, Anthony isn't necessarily a Mason. And so we kind of talked all these things through. And in talking with Steven, which I felt so happy about, is that we really wanted to embrace Anthony's Puerto Rican heritage. I'm also Puerto Rican, so it was important for me to have representation in the film. And so we were able, Isaac went into the script, worked with Mark, and we were, evolved this character into being Javi Rivera. And a fun fact is Rivera is my grandmother's last name. So Javi has my grandma's last name.
So were you born in Puerto Rico, or is that just where your people are from?
I was born in Maryland, but my family was, yes. And so, yes.
So anybody in the family really good at mofongo or?
Yes, and tostones and pasteles, all of the good food.
Every time I eat it, it's like, oh, this cannot be good for me. But it's more of those things that's good for the soul. I love Puerto Rican food. And I'm just, it's one of the places I haven't been yet that I've always wanted to go. With this, is it similar? I mean, I don't like spoilers. I'm not a fan of that. But what parallels between this film and Twister will people kind of see?
Yeah, you have two equally talented teams, but opposing teams kind of going out and chasing these storms. And it is the interaction between these groups of people and a little bit of the competition layer underneath it that comes into play for a really kind of fun journey. And we'll give you some reminders, I think, of how what the first film evoked in you when you watched it. But it really is, I'd say, the biggest thing. And they are all scientists, they're studying these storms. They're trying to figure these storms out. Glen Powell, like I will always say, he was meant to play this character. He's someone I think we kind of always had in mind for the Tyler Owens character. I can't wait for you to see him in this. I think this is like a Glen you haven't seen yet. And he's one of these characters that you kind of don't know really what to make of him, and ultimately has this really great arc, and you find out a little bit more about his. It would
have been better if you would have found somebody that's a little bit more of a leading man character, a little more attractive, I mean, Glen Powell's he's okay.
I know. Every time New York Times today, you open it up, there right on the cover, there's Glen's face. So Hitman comes out today, and I've seen it, and it's really fantastic. Yeah.
That's one I'm really looking forward to seeing. Kind of brain farting on the director on that.
Yeah, Linklater.
Yeah, Meet Me in a Texan. You got to love him. Yes. Dazed and Confused and all that. But this has got to be a very CGI. I mean, I'm assuming it's a very CGI heavy film.
We did a lot. We used the same. Our head of special effects was Scott Fisher, who did Oppenheimer. So you're seeing a lot of practical effects in this film. We were on the road, 70% of the film actually filming on the road and not on a process stage. So there is a lot of, that's, I think, what helped make some of our CGI feel so real, is because we were actually practically doing much of what you see in the film.
See, I like that. That's a really cool thing. The aesthetic of it just feels different. This isn't a small project. Was this there's a lot of plates spinning. That's why I kind of brought up the CGI thing. I was wondering, you got a lot of different camps working on different things. And do you just like these big challenges? Is that just kind of like you like going into the deep end right out of the gate? Or is it just,
Yes, that is it. I'm like, every project has, whether it's a small budget or big budget, it's really the way you go about it is very similar. You have a bigger budget, but yet you still have constraints because you have to make everything fit in that budget the same way you do on a smaller film. So it's just a different scale. So you kind of have to have that sensibility, which was so great with Isaac because he came from an independent film background. So when he looks at things, he looks at it in that way. Can we get this how do we get this for less if we get this, if we get a cost breakdown for what this scene will cost? And kind of constantly looking at things. I mean, this film, I can proudly say we came under budget across the board. So, I feel really proud of the team that we had on this to be able to accomplish that.
that's kind of unheard of, especially with a big, summer film like this to come in under budget. That's kind of an alien concept. But no, you can't with Kennedy Marshall. You're dealing with folks who are the big summer blockbuster people. What was it that you gleaned from your experience there that you really feel like was, okay, this is a big ingredient in how you're approaching doing this as an EP on a film?
I think, working for Frank and Kathy, who have been doing it for so long and are some of the best at what they do in their career, you see how they, solve problems that come their way. It's, even at every position that I had at the company, you're conditioned to look at things like a producer, which is like time is money. What's the most effective and efficient way to do things? How do we service the creatives that we're working with? How do we, make sure that we are facilitating and creating the vision that the director wants? Like that is your number one job, is to really make that happen for them. And so by just being around them and seeing how they've worked, it really was the best film school you could possibly get. I also spent a lot of time working in franchise. I worked on the previous Jurassics and then franchise management over, the different, there was Jurassic World, Fallen Kingdom, and then Dominion. So having all of those experiences really kind of set you up for something of this size and scale. And I worked regularly with studios. This was interesting because it was a co-fi. So you had Warner Brothers and Universal, and Amblin. So usually you get kind of one set of notes, but now, this one, we also had a lot of other people too in this to, make sure they're happy with what's happening in the film.
God, I can't even imagine what that. I mean, I'm not pretending like I know a lot about how movies are made, but I know enough that where you get a lot of chefs in the kitchen, it can kind of become a little bit of you have to be very diplomatic. I guess that's the best way to put it.
I feel like I've learned that through the years. And I think working at Kennedy Marshall, that has really helped me be in that capacity of making sure people feel seen and heard. And also, how do we keep everything moving forward?
Now, isn't Kathleen Kennedy, isn't she doing something with Lucasfilm, or is that okay.
No, that's correct. She, in 2012, became the president of Lucasfilm. So she has been working over there since then. But also because, obviously Frank and Kathy are married. And so a lot of times they would be working out of our office too. So there was crossover with Kathy and their team.
A lot of the staff has to be on set. How much did you need to be, on location compared to, in an office? Is that really just your choice? Do you like, hey, I really want to be where it's happening. So if there's a question that has to get answered, I'm right there,
Yeah, for this job, no, my responsibility was to be there the entire time. So I was, boots on the ground throughout, development, then prep, production, pre-production, prep, and, now I'm post-production. So I'm the day-to-day producer for the project. So that's seeing us through marketing, publicity, and release.
Well, just kind of as a side, like origin story note, like what were you watching as a kid? Were there movies that you were watching that just kind of had you transfixed? You're like, oh, I love this genre, or this, when you were junior high age, let's say, what were you really into?
Yeah, I think I went, I was watching the films from the Amblin projects, right? So that's, I think, when I first became interested in working at Kennedy Marshall, it was because I grew up watching, Raiders, Temple of Doom, Last Crusade, Jurassic Park, Back to the Future, Goonies. Like these were the films that I was really gravitating towards. Poltergeist. It was just, you really felt for these characters in these big worlds. And I think that's the big balance. If you're doing a huge blockbuster film, you're going to have the spectacle of it. But what makes us love it? We love the characters. We want to be them. We want to be friends with them. We want to watch it again because we want to experience the heartbreak, the adventure. So for me, those were the stories that I liked. And I continue to want to pool those emotions like Steven did in the past, like some of the people before us that made these films that we love so much and kind of set up a generation. And really, what Isaac and I want to continue to do is make films like that get people excited to go back to the theater and experience like these big worlds and these big feels.
Spielberg even mentioned, I think it was him. I mean, I'm sure it's him. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, that theatrical releases, we're going to see fewer of them, and they're going to be in the theater longer, just kind of the way people are watching things at home. So what's going to show up on screen is going to be the bigger stuff, do you think that's a good thing, in terms of theatrically the movie experience? Do you think that's better that more people are that they're really going to be going primarily for the big stuff, as opposed to like everything, of course, came out in the theater once upon a time? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a theater goer. I love watching films in theater, but I understand that, time looks different now for people, the access of having our phones and our computers and our TVs that stream. So I don't think he's wrong in saying that, because, our industry is ever changing. And with that change, our output changes. And I think what we're going through in the industry right now, we've gone through with so many different phases. We went through it when TV became a thing. And then it happened again when we got to, DVD and VHS, and that changed the way we looked at things. And then it happens now with streaming. So there's always been like this movement ups and, changes once technology changes in the industry. But, I think that at this point, yeah, these big, event films, I think we like to call them, are what really is driving people to the theater. And my hope is that people are having so much fun in these event films and being in a theater with a group of people and feeling that energy, that they'll want to do that for a whole bunch of different size and scale films. And I think the movie, whether you like it or not, Glen Powell and Sydney Sweeney's Anyone But You was a really great example of a film that was, mid-size budget, and then a rom-com, more traditional, and it ended up, grossing so much in the box office. There was like a whole spin behind it. So I think it broke what the odds were that people thought that people would go to movies and see.
Yeah, I think that, when I watch one of my kids watch a movie on their phone, I'm like, oh, really? I'm there is something about the communal experience of being in a theater, where you can't be distracted. I mean, admittedly, I'll be on my laptop because I'm doing work constantly, and I'll have like a 75-inch, TV, and something's always kind of on, and I'm kind of half paying attention to it. But I found if it's something big I really want to see, I try to close the computer and just focus in. If you're in a theater, you have no other option. You're going to be fully immersed. And I think there's something special about that. I got this kind of the same DNA, I guess it came from traditional theater. You're all kind of there in this kind of experience, It's so funny because where I am now on the island, I got to drive 35, 40 minutes to get to a theater, but I definitely want to see this movie in the theater because if it's anything like the first, I remember the first movie came out and I saw some of the behind the scenes stuff, and the sound of the tornado, of the tornadoes, they were, I think, weaving in some animal sounds. The sound design of it was spectacular. It was really awesome. There was an attention to detail, and I got a feeling, this is definitely a theater experience. You got to see this in the theater, I'm assuming.
I'm absolutely, saying that you should see us in the theater. I think, one, like you said, our sound design, there's no animal sounds in this one, but it's like what they did to create these, we are calling the tornadoes like our monster, our Jaws. And they grow in size and scale. And there's so many different versions of what kind of tornadoes are out there, that you kind of, each one has its own unique feel, both visually and sonically. So I definitely recommend theater for it.
It's coming out at a time when, just look at the news over the last 3 weeks, let's say,
Yes.
How many tornadoes, the frequency of them. And it seems like they, like you said, expanding. They're going further north. They're going
Mhm.
like even in the LA area, having lived in New Orleans for a period of time, but through Hurricane Katrina and Ida and people are like, oh, it's terrible. It's like, well, when the hurricane's coming, the scary thing about tornadoes is that monster vibe about them. They can drop in out of nowhere, and
Mhm.
especially when it's dark, that's a wonderful way of putting it. It does have a monster element to it. Now, as far as your daughter, has she looked at you and gone, this is cool, I think I want to do this too? She looked at the arc of your career, or she's like, nah, no, no, I don't like this.
I know. I always say to people, there's anything else you love to do, maybe this isn't an easy path or journey to go on. But like for me, I love what I do. And I think she sees that I love it. So she has an interest in it. But when she comes to set, I always make it a point to show her, like, here's the costume, here's the art department, here's the camera department, and show her everything, because it takes all of these pieces and they're all important, all these departments to make a film. So she definitely has an interest and hasn't narrowed down yet, but she loves coming and learning and observing what everyone does.
I always talk a little cooking for a brief half of 1 second, sometimes more on my show here. But do you have some of those Puerto Rican recipes you're making for your daughter? I mean,
We go back at least once a year, and so she definitely gets it there. And then my grandmother made a certain pasta salad that I make. I've learned how to make pasteles, which are really hard, but it's almost like a tamale, but based with a plantain. So it's usually stuffed with the meat inside. So it's really delicious. So I've made those for her. And then the rest, she's going to have to go when we visit my family back east, and she'll get her fair share from my aunts and uncles.
and then your partner there, your husband, what does he do? What's his?
Yeah, so he's a doctor of physical therapy. So he has a practice in Santa Monica and Beverly Hills, and does vestibular, so balance, vertigo, and has, which is great because he can go on the road with us. He can have other therapists see the patients, and then he can help
Very cool.
them to see us. But he's very patient, and it's very interesting because a lot of his patients are people who have been in the industry and are older. About 70% are geriatric that he sees, and so they like that he can talk shop with them when he's in there treating, because he knows enough about the business through me that he can often talk about it with his clients and his patients.
You hear about the actors like, oh, they do their own stunts. I'm like, well, like you hear about them years later. It took a toll. Keep those stunt people employed, because they know what they're doing. So if you were to kind of go down a very, very short list of things that you're like, okay, this is the type of movie I would really love to make, be it story, be it character, be it maybe special effects or genre or whatever. What is something that you're itching to kind of get out there and do?
I really love the fantasy space, and finding, Isaac and I have been sitting and kind of talking about what is next, what's the next thing we want to do. And it is looking at, is it, hints of sci-fi? Is it, like I said, fantasy, but always grounded in the human experience. So I think that's really, and a world that we can really build and can build additional ones from it. So something I'm looking for, franchise right now to see, what can we keep on making, and really in that kind of falling in that family space. I would say like PG-13, which was what I love about Twisters, is that, my daughter's 8. If I felt comfortable with her seeing it, I'm not telling all the other parents who have 8-year-olds that they can see it, but it is something that I feel families can experience together and go and watch, and have, and I think that's important now, making time for people.
I couldn't agree more. That's one of the things that PG-13 movies, just you don't see many of them. On the same token, you don't see many really good of the good old-fashioned Judd Apatow rated R movies anymore. I'm like, those are two things we need to bring back. Those kind of rated R movies and the PG-13s that are kind of the adventure kind of
Yep.
things. Now, as far as inspiration, are you looking maybe at books? Do you look at previous works? Where does that spark of interest come from? Or like, what kind of genre you want to do, but where are you pulling that from if you want to find something?
A lot of it comes, what is pre-existing IP out there, like books, articles that have come out. So I'm actively reading all the time, and checking, what rights are available, what are some new series that are coming in. And a lot of times, you can have a completely original idea that you can get and make, but a lot of times it's really great, especially with the studios, to have, a built-in fan base based on IP. So right now there's a project that we're basing, it's 2 short stories being blended together that is currently being written for us. and for Isaac. And we're also just kind of reading a bunch of books right now to see if we can find that sweet spot. Can we develop it into something that could be a big epic adventure?
Do you ever, as a producer, do you look at maybe casting like this actor? I can see them carrying this kind of a project. I want to find, do you ever look at the actor first?
All the time. I'm always watching people and like, oh, I'd love to see them in this role. For example, Daisy is really great as at comedy, but you generally see her in more serious roles. So it's kind of looking at, okay, what other range can we see these actors performing in? And for me, I also love finding actors who are on the up and up and like, how can we push them over? Like, let's get them to be the it person. And
Like Kiernan Shipka. I mean, I saw her. There was this movie I forgot the name of it.
was it Totally Killer?
Yes, yeah, totally. She's just got this kind of spark to her, And again, I know you're trying to do Glen Powell, not Glen Campbell. Totally different people. Glen Powell, I know you're doing him a favor. He kind of is having a hard time getting work lately. He's got that kind of handsome guy swagger, but at the same time, he's funny too, which is kind of nice to see some leading guys out there like that. But when you're coming together with an idea, who do you powwow with? Like, I got this idea. What do you think? Who's kind of your objective voice in your life that you speak with about your projects?
Yeah, there was a woman, her name is Melissa Goodall, and I had hired her early on at Kennedy Marshall, and have seen her, blossom in her career. But she is always you need that person, that voice of reason. And I'm like, does this sound right to you? And you need that one person you can trust. And I know that when someone also has a similar taste to you, it also helps. I definitely want people in my circle that don't think like I do, because I want them to maybe show things to me that I maybe wouldn't naturally gravitate towards. But you always need that one person that you can have a short, quick, can you take a look at this? Do you agree? I think this is what I see in it. And she's generally my go-to. And now as I progressed in my career and my collaborations with Isaac and then another associate named Doug that's working with us, we oftentimes kind of discuss internally together. And, I'm thinking this is a project that I liked from a while ago. Would you guys be interested if I bring it back? And kind of seeing if my finger's on the pulse right with things. And generally, I feel like my taste has been, good. I think this casting has been, like you said, Kiernan Shipka. She's awesome. She's someone I would absolutely love to work with again and find a project for her. She's like, you will love her in our film. And yeah, but you need those are my people, really. And occasionally my husband.
If you were to look back at making this, what was the big takeaway? Like, what was something that phrase, man plans, God laughs, that one thing you're like, oh, this is going to work just like this. And you're like, oh, no, it did not. But what's one thing that did kind of surprise you that was kind of like a happy surprise?
Oh my gosh. Well, there's so many. Well, we really, for us, I think shooting in Oklahoma. It wasn't the first choice for studio because, the incentives there are different and we're really working. I will say Oklahoma was great in giving us incentives so we could bring our business there. We looked at Georgia, but, you can't replicate the plains and the landscape. You just can't. So when we were scouting and we did our due diligence, scouting Georgia, we went to Oklahoma. When we got there, we were like, the sun was setting just right. Like it was a beautiful, like the skyscape was amazing. And we're like, this is where we have to film. And I think that was one of those moments. And we, rolled up our sleeves, and the credits to the studio, they really helped us make it happen there. We were able to hire, some local crew. We had to ship a lot of people in, but we were able to do a trainee program and really help them start to build out, I think, what the film business could look like there. In thinking about it, we filmed in Oklahoma during tornado season. So, that was an interesting choice when we're there. And anytime the sky looked perfect, like this is the perfect sky to film, we knew thunder and lightning was coming. And we do have to shut down every time that there is lightning for 30 minutes until the lightning stops. Is less than, I think I had to double check if it's 6 miles or 13 miles. The number is slipping my mind. But that part was challenging and really kind of keeping to our schedule and making our days. But our crew was so on top of it and really wanting to make this all work and work for Isaac. And Isaac was creative in how he shot things that we were able, to stay on schedule. The hardest part, I think, is that we had 2 strikes happen while we made this film. So we had a writer's strike happen right before we started.
Oh my,
And
yeah.
so that means no changes to the script. If any changes happened in the film, the actors were doing it like improvised on the spot. People were looking to shut down productions, and, we did everything above board, and really we kept our production going through the writer strike. And then with 12 days left, we were hit with the writer strike, or the actor strike. And so that was another thing. So our whole goal was, can we finish this movie before the year's over? Can we make this release date that we have coming up? And everything we did was working to get this release date, which means once we've stopped for the strike, we went into editorial and edited Isaac and Terry Shropshire, edited as much as they could with what we had. So that way we can make our VFX turnovers to keep our release date, with the hope that we could keep it. So it was a lot of, problem solving and staying positive.
You're earning all kinds of stripes on this film here.
Yes.
Kind of like saying, well, I got my strike stripe. I've got my different locations right now. Me being a Texan, we've got a thing with Oklahoma.
Yes.
It's kind of like begrudgingly, all right, they're fine.
Yeah.
But there was a joke when I was growing up. It's like, cross the Red River, you need a passport. But I've nothing but love for my Oklahoma friends. But where exactly in Oklahoma did you film?
Yeah, our home base was Oklahoma City. There, we used what was Prairie Surf Studios. That was where our sound stages were, right in the heart of the city. And everything really, when we went on, we were about 30% on stage, 70% on the road, and the majority was in the at least within 45 minutes around Oklahoma City. We did shoot in Pawhuska, which was where they shot Killers of the Flower Moon. We shot up on Drummond Ranch, and that was about 2
I know
hours.
exactly where you are.
Yeah, 2 hours outside of Oklahoma City. So that's really
because that's Reed Drummond's place, right?
Yep. It was we filmed on Ford's, the brothers' side.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Ford's side, yeah.
So you didn't get any good craft services from her. Okay.
No, but we stayed in town, right where that where her hotel was, right by her shop, the Pioneer Woman.
I'm very excited to see it. I will say that. I will excited to see it in the theater. Even though it's a 35-minute drive for me, I will go buy my ticket to go see it, because it's.
I promise it'll be worth it.
Very excited, and this is such a neat kind of a project, especially for Gen X kid. That was kind of a big movie. It was when it was at 96?
Yeah.
96 was when it came out.
Yeah.
So I've waited a long time. Before we get going, I got something I call my 7 questions that I always like to ask everybody. It's just a little extra fun. A few questions, but the first one: what is your favorite comfort food? The thing that, even makes you feel good on a bad day, or maybe you're having a great day, you just like, I just want to go add to it,
Yeah, that's a really good question, but I will say pizza. I'm like, there's a place called Great White. It's a restaurant not far from our house that has really great pizzas. And so, that's probably would be my pick.
Are you a thin crust person? Or are you a deep dish person?
I'm thin crust. My husband's from Chicago, so I definitely experienced the deep dish pizzas, but I am a thin crust pizza.
I think they're two different things, equally noble. But when I think pizza, I always think thin crust as well. I'm with you. Now, if you were to sit down, you want to talk story with 3 people, sit down and have coffee for a few hours, and it would be living or not, 3 people that you would love to sit down and chat with. Who would those folks be?
Oh, this is really great. I would say one, I always said I'd want to sit down with Michelle Obama. That is one for me. Just to hear, kind of spitball ideas. And I think after reading Becoming and everything she's done, I think she'd be really fascinating, interesting to talk to.
She actually has a good sense of humor too.
Yes.
Kind of she's sharp,
Who else I would want to sit down with Marilyn Monroe. I think she just had an interesting, I feel like she was really progressive in who she was as a person, and just kind of want to hear more about what her experience was like here, and also, kind of talk story with, different stories and projects and what drew her to why she said yes to the projects that she said yes to. And who else would I want to sit down with? This is a good question. I think of my third person. It would probably be, I think I would sit, it might be a wild ride, but probably Alfred Hitchcock, because I do have a love for the horror space. And I just saw again recently Psycho on the big screen, And it was just so amazing and well done. So I think that would be my third.
Yeah, I love it when they do that, when they do the re-releases. I wish I could get to more of those. I'm just not in a place where that really happens. But when I was in Southern California, that was pretty cool. You know, you see something like last time it was on screen was decades ago or something.
Yep.
Now, the next question I got for you is, let's go back to young Ashley. Who was your first celebrity crush?
Who was my first? I think it was Tom Cruise. My first celebrity crush.
I don't know what he's doing. He does not age normally. I don't know. He's in his 60s now. He still looks the same. I don't know.
Yes, he looks good. I just remember watching Risky Business and Cocktails with my one aunt, and I was like, who is this person when I was younger? And it was, he left an impression on all of us.
Very good. Now, if you were to be living on an island, let's say it's an exotic island, somewhere nice, somewhere you want to be. You're not a castaway, but you're going to be there for a year, no internet. So you need to bring one DVD with you of a movie and one CD with you for music. And so you got one album and one DVD, one album and one movie. What would you bring with you?
Right now, the DVD I would bring with me would be, I think I would bring Raiders with me.
The original one, right?
The original.
Yeah.
The first, Raiders of the Lost Ark. I'd bring the first one. And soundtrack or like music, I would say I'm not plugging it because it's our film, but our soundtrack to this new movie, the Twisters album, is pretty fantastic with amazing art.
Well, you got to tell me who's on it though.
We have Luke Combs, Tucker Wetmore, Lainey Wilson, Jelly Roll, Megan Mulroney, Bailey Zimmerman, Breland, Shania, Miranda. They're all on there.
You've just listed all of my daughter's favorites.
We'll make sure we'll get you a copy of the soundtrack. It'll be out soon.
Oh, that's very kind. Yeah, Luke Combs is what a great singer he is. So, just as a little quick side note, did you have any hand in that, or did you?
Yes, I was an executive music producer on the soundtrack. So we worked really closely with Atlanta. I was working with Kevin Weaver at Atlantic Records and his team. They did Barbie, and with our music execs, Mike Knobloch, Rachel Levy, over at Universal, and we kind of and Isaac, he's also an executive music producer on the record, and we work really closely to get the artist and make sure the songs fit with the scenes that we're using them in.
I know my daughter is a big fan of Zach Bryan.
Yes, we love Zach. We really were trying to make it work and he's an Oklahoma guy, but he's not on this one, but I love Zach Bryan.
I think he's with Warner, I think.
He is.
Yeah, and I'm trying to speak with him because I know my daughter, who's actually the voice of my show, has not even heard an episode. But I'm like, what if we get Zach Bryan on? When she's like, maybe I'll listen. I don't know, but all the folks you listed, that's gonna be a damn good album, actually. Yeah. That's wonderful. So we got that locked in. We know you're going to the island with. Now, if we were to say from the time you get up to the time you go to bed, definition of a perfect day, the component parts of that perfect day, what would those things be?
Oh my gosh, Mark, you're asking like really great, thoughtful questions. I think for me, let's say if it's a weekend, I'll say those are my good days. So I'll say, or like my free days, but it is, my family's very routine. The dog comes in to wake us up for food. Then my daughter comes in and kind of we're all in the room together. And I think would probably be going on a hike or doing something all together. And then getting a really good breakfast. I love bagels.
Is coffee a part of that?
Oh, absolutely. I can't believe I forgot that. So I would have a morning.
That's one common theme. Most people, I remember speaking to Billy Magnuson. He said, he put it best. He said the ritual of making coffee in the morning. I'm like, yeah, that's something I really, everybody's like, oh, got to have that cup of coffee. It always starts there. So
yes. It's like that cup to get you going. And then I think we're out the door pretty early in our house, but go out to do something with whether we go up to the Griffith Observatory and go up to, there's a hike there that we like to do. So do that, get bagels, breakfast, come back. And usually it would entail like either doing something with family or friends. I think definitely a movie in there, watching a movie, whether, as a family, hopefully, preferably something good in the theater for us to see, and then getting a really great dinner together. And then calling it an early night after that. So that's kind of, one of my
That seems wonderful. That is one thing I do miss about having the little kids around, coming into the room and kind of getting you going in the morning. And they got to be teenagers, and I was the one up first, which is odd. Now, if you are doing this for a living and this vocation wasn't available to you, what could you see that would be out there where you'd derive joy and satisfaction to an alternate career?
Yeah. For me, I think I have to be doing something creative and having that ability to do it. I think I really do love homes and home design and furnishing. And I think maybe would be doing something like that, like updating homes, flipping homes, maybe something in that space that's completely opposite of doing what I do here.
But still creative and still, seeing a project through.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do check things off my lists. I do get much joy out of that.
Very good. Now, the last question I got for you is if you were to jump into that DeLorean, going back in time, you go to see 16-year-old Ashley. You got a piece of advice. You got a couple minutes with you. What would the piece of advice be to either put you on a better path or a different path, or maybe make that moment in your life a little better? What would that piece of advice be?
Yeah, I think it'd be to be easier on myself. I think I think I'm my own worst critic sometimes, and I'm really, can be hard on myself. And I would say just, just not to do that, and that it's okay for not everyone to like you. You have to make sure you like yourself, and making choices that feel good and right for you. And I think I would say worry less about the others and really focus on what you need to be doing and what's bringing you joy too.
What makes me happy is so many people say something so very similar to that I speak with, that just go easy on yourself, trust yourself, take it easy.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's creative types naturally as youngins, if we're all just kind of, in our heads so much, we're really kind of rough on ourselves, or, it's just a very interesting note. A lot of folks say that. So, but no, I do appreciate you taking some time out of your day to sit down with me and my puppy, who's passed out finally, after he chooses just now to pass out on the floor. He's been running around the whole time. But I certainly appreciate it. Best of luck to you. And hopefully we'll have a chance to connect down the line then.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, there you go. Ashley Jay Sandberg, the executive producer of the new film Twisters. Looking forward to seeing it, coming out tomorrow, Friday, July 19th. It's going to be a good one. I think you'll enjoy it quite a bit. Also, everything you could possibly want to know about the show is at storyandcraftpod.com. Don't forget, if you would, to follow Story and Craft. Grab your phone, hit the follow button, get notified every time there is a new episode. We've got some great ones coming up here over the next few weeks. Also, if you would, drop a little review in there, some stars. It's a great way to help people find the show, and I appreciate it. I'm sending you a big virtual hug for doing that for me, all right? I'm not trying to make it awkward. I just want to give you a hug. All right, that's awkward. Okay, so go have a great rest of your day, evening, weekend, whatever you got going on. Thank you so much for making Story and Craft part of what you have going on every week. Glad to have you be a part of it. Go have a great one. We will connect very soon right here on Story and Craft.
That's it for this episode of Story and Craft. Join Mark next week for more conversation right here on Story and Craft. Story and Craft is a presentation of Mark Preston Productions, LLC. Executive producer is Mark Preston. Associate producer is Zachary Holden. Please rate and review Story and Craft on Apple Podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. You can subscribe to show updates and stay in the know. Just head to storyandcraftpod.com and sign up for the newsletter. I'm Emma Dillon. See you next time, and remember, keep telling your story.
Come on.